everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today we are doing something slightly different because a couple of weeks ago I was sent this. FASISAC. I'm probably going to get this wrong, I get this wrong every time. The Five-a-Side International Soccer Association Championships. Now, the designer of the game contacted me and asked whether I would like to take a look at this. This is a game that is not currently in production. This is a pre-production copy that I've been sent. I've been playing it over the Easter break with my daughter, who is quite taken with it. So I thought I'd just do a little video and show you what it's all about. At the moment, I'm not entirely sure what the plan is, whether eventually it will go to Kickstarter or whether they're just shopping this around for distribution through the traditional channels. But you can get a print and play version of this from the FASISAC.com website. I will put a link at the end of the video for anybody who watches this and thinks they might like to give it a try. But yeah, I'm going to take this to the table. I'm going to give you a very, very quick rundown of what it's all about. So, FASISAC is a card and dice game, and as you might expect from a game about football or five-a-side soccer, whatever you want to call it, it is a game of two halves. The first half of the game, there is a drafting element where you pick your teams. And then the second half of the game is a very dice-heavy resolution system where you figure out who's actually won the match. So the first thing that happens is, and I should point out, this is predominantly a two-player game, although there are rules for having more players and doing sort of championship-type gameplay. But it is mainly a two-player game, a head-to-head showdown. So with two players, you have to start by getting some cards to draft, and you lay out on the table two goalkeepers. This is a goalkeeper, you can see he's got a little hand. And then you lay out 14 other cards, which are regular field players. And you roll off to see which is the home team and which is the away team, and the home team draws first. And you take it in turns to take players from the ones that are available. You can only have one goalkeeper, obviously, and then you will eventually end up with one goalkeeper each and 7 players each. When you are picking your players, you're looking at two different things, really. Each player has their nationality up at the top. They have a set of skills. They have a price value here, and they have up to 6 symbols running across the bottom. This player happens to have all 6, meaning he's a very versatile player. But you're looking for basically a good balance of the various different skills, and also you're looking to try and get players that all have similar preferred play styles. For example, you might want to have as many players as possible with this down arrow symbol. So, shooting represents their ability to actually hit the target. Skill represents their ability to outmaneuver a defending player. Tackling represents their ability to actually take the ball off of an attacking player. And goalkeeping is usually exclusively of interest to your goalkeepers, although there is a variant format where you don't actually have a goalkeeper and other players can sort of rush back to fill the goalkeeping position, in which case that goalkeeping stat is of benefit to all of the players. So you take it in turns to pick your squad. To play a match, you have to first pick your starting team. Your starting team will be your goalkeeper and 4 other players. Let's say, for example, that I have picked these 4 players. This is something of a dream team because these are all pretty decent players. The way you're arranging them, you will put your goalkeeper at the back, obviously, in goal. You then need to arrange the rest of your team so that you have a defender. Your defender is the one that is most likely going to be intercepting attacking players, so you want him to have a high tackling value. So let's pick Santiago here because of his tackling value of 7. You then need 2 midfield players, midfield left, midfield right. These are going to be... They're your sort of run-of-the-mill characters that they could be attacking, they could be defending. You need them to be relatively good all-round players, really. So we're going to put Bin over here, and we're going to put Geronimo over here. And like I said, I should point out, that this is a pre-production copy of the game because the game isn't in production yet. So I have no idea whether this is final artwork on the cards, the card design, and as you'll see in a moment, the dice that I'm using are just stickered 8-sided dice. So this doesn't represent any kind of final production quality, and obviously if you decide to download the print and play, the quality will be what you make it. Finally, we have our striker. He really needs to be having a high shooting value and also relatively decent skill value, because he has to actually circumvent the defenders to get the shots on goal. So he's going to go there. So there you go, that is my starting lineup. As part of picking your starting lineup, one of the things you need to consider is these symbols along the bottom. Like I said, you tend to want to have players that have a similar play style in your team at any one time, because once both players have picked their lineup, they need to pick a tactic for the first half of the match. For the first half of the match, you can pick from any of the play styles available. You've got high press, fluid, direct, counter, sit deep, and possession. And as you can see, each one has a symbol that matches one of the symbols on the bottom of the card here. I have got 5 players here that all have this symbol of 3 arrows pointing up. The 3 arrows pointing up represents counter, so it would be a good idea for me to pick counter as my tactic for this particular half of the game. Once you've picked your tactic, you need to look at how many players you have on your team that match that tactic. So here, it says I've got 5 players, so I've got 5 attack cards, 5 boost cards, and my opponent will lose 1 attack card. So for each attack card, I get to pick, let's say I'm the home team. For each attack card, I get to pick one of these because I'm the home team. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll also get some boost cards. Boost cards are one-time use cards that will benefit you during the course of the game when you play them. For example, this goalkeeping boost says you are narrowing the angle of the shot. You will get +3 to any roll that you make to defend against a shot, or you can get +1 to any other roll. You play it before rolling the dice. And most of the cards are similar to that. There are a few alternative cards that allow you to re-roll dice or do something slightly different, but in most cases it's a modifier to your dice roll. So here's a skill boost, it's a lightning pace, or you've got a tackling one that gives you expert timing. So because I have 5 players with this particular playstyle, I will get 5 boost cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, we have to look down the bottom here. There is a versus bonus. And it says here, if your opponent is using one of these playstyles, you get an additional advantage. So let's say that my opponent in this particular game was going to play fluid, which is the yellow symbol. It says here that because they're playing fluid, I get an additional attack card and an additional boost card. So I get to add 1 more of those, and 1 more of those. Now, I've done that. My opponent will do exactly the same thing, but bearing in mind, whatever they do, they will have 1 less attack card because of this modifier here on the card. Once you've done that, that is the preparation finished. You add your home attack cards to however many away attack cards your opponent had. They get put into a single stack and shuffled. And that will be the event deck for the first half of the game. And then it's a simple matter of resolving the play. And the way this happens is you draw an event card. It's a home attack, so that means that I am the attacker for this part of the match, and my opponent will be defending. As the attacker, I roll this white dice to determine which of my players is going to attack. As a defender, my opponent rolls the red dice. So, we have MR here, which means my mid-right player is going to be attacking against my opponent's defender. Let's assume this poor sap is my opponent's defender. He has a tackling of 1. He really wouldn't be a defender in an actual game. To resolve the attack, first of all, I roll a dice and I add my skill value, my skill being 8. My opponent rolls a dice and adds his tackling value, which is 1. Because obviously I'm attacking, he's trying to tackle the ball off of me. So we both roll. If I want to, I can choose to play a card if I've got one. For example, I could play this skill boost card to give me an additional +5 on this dice roll, but these cards are one use. Obviously, in this particular case, with me having a skill of 8 and my opponent having a tackling of 1, it really doesn't seem like a good idea. So I roll for my skill, I've rolled a 5, so my total there would be 13. My opponent rolls his dice, he's rolled a 12. So 12 with the 1 actually comes to 13. So in this particular case, because it is a draw, Dante would actually win that particular challenge and would take the ball off me, and that would end my home attack, and we would then draw the next event from the deck and we would go again. But let's say that that wasn't a result, and let's say that I rolled my 5 and Dante rolled a 7. That would mean that I have nipped past the defender and I get to take a shot on goal. To take a shot on goal, I now have to roll again using my shooting value against my opponent's goalkeeper. Let's say this is my opponent's goalkeeper. He has a goalkeeping value of 8. Dante can go away now. He has failed abysmally. Off he goes. So I'm rolling a dice and adding my shooting value. My opponent rolls a dice and adds his goalkeeping value. Again, I have a chance to play a card to boost it. In this particular case, it would actually be a good idea for me to play this shooting boost to give me a +5. My opponent, of course, may have a card that allows him to boost his goalkeeping score, which he also has the opportunity to play. You're allowed to play one card each for each stage of the match. But let's say he doesn't have any cards he wants to play. I get my +5, so I'm rolling a 9 against a 9. He's rolling against an 8. I've rolled a 7. And he has rolled a 5. So in this particular case, I have actually beaten the goalkeeper and I score a goal. Which means I get to put 1 score on the scorecard here, tracked with little gems on the scorecard. If he had scored equal to or greater than I did, then the shot would miss, and we would again go back to the event deck and draw the next card and go again. This continues, going through the event deck with home and away attacks. Always the case that you roll to beat the defender, then you roll to beat the keeper, then you draw another event card, and you keep going until you've got through this deck. This deck represents the first half of the match. At halftime, you have the option to change out your players because you have 3 players sat on the bench because of the number of... You actually had 7 field players and you're only putting 4 on the board at any one time. So if you want to, you can mix up your tactics for the second half. If you do, of course, you have to go through this whole process again with whichever tactic you pick, building your event deck, building your boost deck, your boost cards. Any cards you had left from the first half, you do get to keep. And then you go again, you play through the second half. At the end of the second half, the team that has scored the most goals wins the game. And that is FASISAC. That's pretty much it. There, like I say, there's some rules for playing with more players and sort of a championship. There's even a solo option where you can sort of play against an AI, which depending on there's 3 different skill levels for the AI, and you pick the skill level that you want to face against. That determines how good they are, when they use boosts and things like that. But that is it. So there we go, that is it. A very brief rundown of FASISAC, which is still in the pre-production stages at the moment, so I have no idea if additional rules are going to change, graphics and everything else like that. That was a very brief rundown. I didn't cover some of the aspects of the game. For example, If you want to, you can do an auction drafting system where you have a certain amount of money, and therefore, when you're looking at the cards, this money value becomes more important because you don't want to run out of money before you've bought all the players that you need. And there's a penalty shootout system for if there's a draw, if you want to adopt that, if you don't want the games to end in draws. There's a lot of different minor rules and ways to change the game a little bit. But it is basically, it's a game of two halves. One half, you're drafting and building your team, trying to get cards that work well together while staying within the budget if you're playing with that particular rule. And in the second half of the game, it's largely a dice throwing game with a small amount of card play to boost dice rolls mainly. My daughter quite enjoyed the dice rolling aspect of it. She's 8 years old and she picked it up very, very quickly. But that's pretty much all I've got to say at the moment. Like I say, I was sent this as a pre-production copy just to take a look at, see what I thought. And I thought I'd share it here. If this looks like something you might be interested in trying out, if you go to FASISAC.com, I'll put the link here, you can get the print and play version, print out the cards and give it a go for yourself and see what you think. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to the guys from FASISAC for sending me this pre-production copy, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye everyone. Bye-bye.